Have you ever trusted someone so much that you ignored all the signs until the truth slapped you in the face? That's exactly what happened to Miriam, until one ordinary evening turned her perfect life upside down. Let's begin. The city of Westbridge was alive as usual that evening. The streets hummed with life, car horns blaring, vendors calling out to customers, the warm glow of streetlights flickering against the pavement. Miriam walked through the busy supermarket, moving past neatly stacked shelves filled with everything from fresh vegetables to imported chocolates. She checked her list, crossing off items as she placed them into the cart. Milk, bread, rice, tomatoes. She hesitated at the cereal aisle, debating whether to grab Zara's favorite honey-flavored loops or Kelvin's chocolate squares. Smiling, she took both. She knew the little arguments that would come in the morning if she picked one over the other. As she moved toward the checkout, her phone vibrated in her bag. A message from Daniel flashed on the screen. Working late. Don't wait up. A small sigh escaped her lips. It wasn't the first time. Lately, he had been coming home later and later, brushing off her questions with short answers. Meetings ran late. Traffic was bad. I was with a client. Always something. She had believed him at first. She had no reason not to. After all, wasn't this the same man who once rushed home just to have dinner with her? The cashier rang up her items, snapping her out of her thoughts. She paid, took the bags, and stepped outside into the cool evening air. Then she saw it. Daniel's silver Lexus parked across the street in front of Crown Cafe. Miriam stopped mid-step, her heart skipping a beat. Her fingers instinctively tightened around the plastic bag handles. Crown Cafe. She blinked. Maybe she was mistaken. Maybe it just looked like his car. But deep down, she knew better. That was their place. The place where he had taken her on their third date, where he had asked her to be his wife, where they had once sat for hours talking about their dreams. It was their little escape from the noise of life. But it had been months, maybe even years, since the last time he brought her here. Her feet moved before she could think. She crossed the road, her body tense, a cold shiver running through her. When she reached the cafe, she hesitated for a moment before peeking through the large glass window. And there he was. Daniel sat at a table near the window, his back slightly turned toward the entrance. Across from him sat a woman. Younger, beautiful. She was laughing, her head tilted slightly, her fingers delicately twirling a strand of her dark hair. Sasha. Miriam's breath caught in her throat. She felt her entire world tilt, like she had stepped off solid ground into nothingness. The way Daniel looked at her, it wasn't polite conversation. It wasn't a business meeting. It was the way a man looks at a woman when he is completely lost in her. A tight pain gripped her chest. It felt wrong, like an intruder had entered her home, stolen something precious, and left everything else looking normal. Except nothing was normal anymore. Daniel leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table, a smile tugging at his lips. Sasha touched his wrist briefly as she whispered something. He didn't pull away. Miriam's hands trembled, her fingers gripping the grocery bag handles until the plastic threatened to snap. A surge of emotions crashed over her all at once. Shock, anger, confusion, disbelief. She wanted to storm inside, wanted to throw the bag at him, demand an explanation, cause a scene. But instead, she just stood there, rooted to the pavement, her heartbeat thundering in her ears. A memory flashed in her mind, a time when she had been the woman sitting across from him, laughing at his jokes, holding his hand. Her breath felt shallow. She stepped back slowly, blending into the moving crowd. Her body moved, but her mind felt frozen. This was real. This was happening. Her world, the life she had carefully built with him, had just cracked at the foundation, and she had no idea what to do next. She turned and walked away, not knowing where she was going. She needed air, space, anything but the suffocating weight pressing on her chest. The streets of Westbridge blurred around her as her feet carried her forward. She could hear the distant laughter of teenagers outside an ice cream shop, the sound of a bus screeching to a halt, the soft hum of a street musician playing a guitar. The world was moving on, unaware that hers had just come to a stop. She found herself at Willow Park, where she and Daniel used to bring the kids for Sunday picnics. She sank onto a bench, her grocery bags placed beside her, the plastic crinkling in the quiet night. Her hands moved to her lap, clenching and unclenching. Why? When things changed? Was it her? Had she become boring? Predictable? Had he fallen out of love? Her mind spiraled with questions, but no answers came. Just the image of them, Daniel and Sasha, laughing, whispering, lost in each other. She closed her eyes for a long moment, then exhaled. She couldn't stay here forever. With slow, deliberate movements, she picked up her grocery bags and made her way home. When she stepped into their apartment, the sound of Zara and Kelvin playing in the living room filled the air. Their innocent laughter sliced through her like a knife. She inhaled deeply, pushing down the storm inside her. They couldn't see her like this. "Mommy's home!" Zara cheered, running toward her with a wide grin. Kelvin followed, his small hands reaching for the grocery bags. Miriam forced a smile. "Yes, I'm home, my loves." She ruffled their hair, pretending everything was normal. She set the groceries on the kitchen counter, her movements slow, deliberate. She could hear the television playing in the background, some cartoon show Zara and Kelvin loved. The normalcy of it all felt surreal. She glanced at the clock. 7:45 p.m. Daniel would usually be home in an hour. But tonight, would he come straight home? Or would he stay with her? The thought made her stomach churn. She needed a distraction. She started putting away the groceries, her hands slightly shaking. "Mom, are you okay?" Zara's voice was soft, but filled with concern. Miriam turned, forcing another smile. "Of course, sweetie. Just a little tired." Zara studied her for a moment, then nodded, satisfied. She skipped back to the couch, joining Kelvin. Miriam exhaled. She needed time to think, to process, to figure out what came next, and most importantly, to decide if she was ready to confront Daniel. Before we continue, do me a quick favor. Hit that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts so far, and most importantly, subscribe. You won't want to miss what's coming next. And hey, share this with someone who loves a good twist. All right, let's get back to the story. Miriam stepped into their home, setting the grocery bags on the counter with a weight heavier than the items inside. The warmth of the house, the familiar scent of lavender from the diffuser in the corner, and the faint sounds of Zara and Kelvin's laughter playing in the living room should have felt comforting. But instead, everything felt distant, as if she were watching her own life from behind a thick glass. She took a deep breath and moved to the kitchen. Her hands worked on autopilot, washing the vegetables, heating oil in the pan, reaching for the spices in their usual place. It was a routine she had performed 1,000 times. Yet tonight, every sound felt amplified. The sizzle of onions hitting the pan, the rhythmic chopping of carrots, the clinking of plates. Everything was louder, sharper. "Mommy, can we have extra sauce today?" Kelvin's voice pulled her back. He stood near the counter, his bright eyes expectant. "Of course, sweetheart," she replied, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. She ruffled his hair, masking her turmoil with a practiced smile. Kelvin grinned and ran back to the living room, where Zara was sprawled on the rug, flipping through one of her books. The front door clicked open. Daniel was home. Miriam felt her heartbeat quicken, but she forced herself to keep stirring the pot as if nothing had changed. Footsteps approached, slow and casual. Then, the scent of his cologne filled the space, a scent she had once loved but now felt suffocating. A gentle kiss landed on her forehead. It was his usual greeting, the same small act of affection he had done for years. But tonight she flinched. It was subtle, barely noticeable, but she knew he felt it because his lips lingered a second too long before he pulled away. Her fingers gripped the wooden spoon tighter. "Long day?" Daniel asked, his voice smooth, effortless. Miriam turned to him, studying him for the first time with new eyes. He looked the same, his neatly pressed shirt, his relaxed posture, the slight shadow of stubble along his jaw. But now, she saw the details she had overlooked before. His phone, always in his pocket. His smile, quick but distant. The way he avoided meeting her gaze for more than a second. "Yeah," she finally said, turning back to the stove. "Yours." Busy as always. The same answer. The same routine. Except tonight, she knew better. Dinner was quiet, too quiet. Normally, Kelvin would chatter about his school adventures. Zara would interrupt with her own stories, and Daniel would chuckle at their playful bickering. But tonight, there was an invisible weight at the table, pressing down on everything. Miriam barely tasted the food as she chewed. She watched Daniel between small glances, looking for something, anything, that would betray his secret. But he was good, too good. He ate like he always did, nodding occasionally at the kids' stories, smiling at the right moments. If she hadn't seen him at the cafe, she wouldn't have suspected a thing. Halfway through dinner, Zara paused, her fork hovering over her plate. "Mom, are you okay?" Miriam's breath caught. She met her daughter's eyes, full of innocent concern. Daniel's head lifted slightly at the question, but he didn't say anything. Miriam forced a smile. "Of course, sweetie. Just a little tired." Zara studied her for a moment longer before nodding and returning to her food. But Miriam could feel Daniel watching her now. Just for a second. A brief, searching glance before he returned his focus to his plate. Did he know that she knew? After dinner, the routine continued. Daniel sat in the living room, his laptop open, pretending to work. The kids settled in front of the TV, watching their favorite cartoon. Miriam cleared the table, moving slowly, deliberately. Her ears were tuned to every sound, every sigh, every shift in Daniel's posture. His phone vibrated. Miriam froze for a fraction of a second. Daniel picked it up casually, glancing at the screen before flipping it over and setting it back down. Too quick, too smooth. Miriam wiped her hands on a dish towel, her mind racing. Had that been her? Sasha? A sharp pain spread through her chest, but she swallowed it down. She wouldn't break. Not here. Not in front of him. Instead, she walked over to the couch where Zara and Kelvin were curled up with their blankets. She settled between them, wrapping her arms around their small bodies. They both snuggled closer without question, their warmth grounding her. She pressed a kiss to Kelvin's hair, inhaling his familiar baby shampoo scent. For a moment, she closed her eyes, letting herself forget, just for a little while. Letting herself pretend that everything was still the way it used to be. But it wasn't, and it never would be again. That night, when the kids were finally tucked into bed, Miriam climbed under the covers next to Daniel. He lay on his side, scrolling through his phone, his face illuminated by the screen. She stared at the ceiling, her mind a battlefield of emotions. She wanted to turn to him, to ask outright, who is she? Why are you doing this? But the words wouldn't come. Not yet. Not when she didn't even know what she wanted to hear. Instead, she turned her back to him, staring at the darkened wall. Minutes passed. The glow of his phone finally faded as he set it on the nightstand. Then, he turned, draping an arm over her waist, pulling her close. Her body tensed, but she forced herself to relax. She had done this for 12 years. She could do it one more night. But as she lay there in the darkness, her heart heavy and her mind restless, she knew one thing for certain. She could never unsee what she had seen. Miriam wasn't sure when the shift happened, when the man she had built a life with began to feel like a stranger in their own home. But now, she saw it everywhere. It was in the way Daniel lingered in front of the mirror longer than before, adjusting his tie, smoothing out invisible creases on his crisp shirts. It was in the way his cologne had changed, something bolder, unfamiliar. It was in the way he chuckled at his phone, fingers tapping away in conversations he never shared. She had noticed these things before, but life was busy, and she had always found reasons not to dwell. Maybe he was just more conscious of his appearance because of work. Maybe he was texting a colleague. Maybe she was imagining it all. But now she knew better. Now she was paying attention. One evening, as Miriam stood by the bedroom window, folding laundry, she heard the familiar rustle of Daniel getting ready to leave. The click of the belt buckle, the zip of his jacket. Her hands stilled over a neatly folded towel. She turned around just as he grabbed his keys from the dresser. "Going somewhere?" she asked, keeping her voice light. Casual, nonchalant. Daniel barely glanced up. "Yeah, work dinner. You know how it is." She nodded, studying his reflection in the mirror as he adjusted his cufflinks. Too smooth. Too practiced. Did he even realize he had said, "Work dinner," without hesitation? Like he had the answer ready before she even asked. She stepped closer, resting her hand on the bedpost. "Where's the dinner?" He finally turned, his expression easy, as if this conversation meant nothing. "That new place, Crescent Lounge. Fancy, overpriced, the usual." Miriam simply nodded. She had never heard of Crescent Lounge, but she wouldn't ask. Not yet. Instead, she gave a small smile. "Have fun." Daniel hesitated just for a second before smiling back. "Thanks." Then, he grabbed his jacket and was gone. Miriam stood in the quiet bedroom, staring at the closed door. Her fingers unconsciously twisted the corner of the towel she was holding. He was lying. The realization settled over her like a thick fog. She had suspected it, but hearing it so effortlessly come from his lips made it real. She walked over to his side of the closet, where his suits and shirts hung in neat, perfect rows. She reached out, running her fingers over the fabric. "When did I start becoming invisible to him?" she whispered. She could remember a time when Daniel would rush home, excited to tell her about his day. When his eyes would light up at the smallest things, her cooking, the way she styled her hair, the stories she told about the kids. When had that stopped? When had she become just another part of the furniture in his life? Later that night, she sat in the living room, mindlessly flipping through a magazine, waiting. At 10:30 p.m., she checked the clock. At 11:15 p.m., she checked her phone. No message. By midnight, her heart was pounding with unspoken frustration. Daniel always texted, even if it was a quick heading home soon. Tonight, nothing. She heard the front door unlock at 12:37 a.m. He walked in quietly, thinking she was asleep, but she wasn't. She was sitting in the dim glow of the living room lamp, her magazine long forgotten on the coffee table. Daniel paused when he saw her, his surprise flickering across his face for only a second before he smiled. "Hey, you're still up?" Miriam nodded slowly, watching him. "Yeah, couldn't sleep." He walked over, dropping his keys on the table. The dinner ran longer than expected. "You know how these things go." She gave a small, unreadable smile. "Yeah, I know how it is." He didn't notice the way her fingers gripped the edge of the couch. Didn't notice the way she was studying him like a puzzle she was trying to solve. She could smell the faintest trace of perfume on his shirt, one that wasn't hers. Daniel stretched. "I'm exhausted. I'll see you in bed." She nodded, watching as he disappeared down the hallway. As soon as he was out of sight, she exhaled slowly, pressing a hand against her chest. Her worst fear wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was becoming real. The next morning, Miriam met up with her best friend, Tasha, at a cozy cafe in Westbridge. Tasha was the kind of person who always spoke her mind, and right now, Miriam needed honesty. After taking a sip of her coffee, Tasha leaned in. "Okay, spill. You have that look." Miriam sighed, stirring her tea. "It's Daniel." Tasha raised an eyebrow. "What did he do?" Miriam hesitated. "I don't know for sure, but something's wrong. He's been acting different. Late nights. Secretive. Smiling at his phone like a teenager in love." Tasha set her cup down with a thud. "Miriam, that's not just acting different. That's suspicious." Miriam chewed on her lip. "I don't want to jump to conclusions." "Jump to conclusions?" "Girl, you're already standing on the edge of the cliff." Miriam let out a small, humorless laugh. I need to be sure. I need proof before I do anything." Tasha folded her arms. "And then what? What's the plan?" Miriam exhaled, shaking her head. "I don't know yet." Tasha studied her for a moment before sighing. "Miriam, listen to me. You deserve the truth. If he's lying, you need to know." Miriam looked down at her hands. "I just need a little more time." Tasha reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "Then take it, but don't lose yourself in the process." That night, as Miriam prepared for bed, she found herself back in Daniel's closet, running her hands over his shirts once more. She traced the familiar stitching of his favorite blue button-down. The fabric felt the same, but everything else had changed. She wasn't ready to confront him. Not yet. But one thing was clear. The man she had loved for 12 years was slipping away, and she had no idea how to stop it. The afternoon sun hung low, casting long shadows over the pavement as Miriam parked near the school gate. She had arrived early, as usual, enjoying these quiet moments before the flood of parents and children filled the space with chatter. She tapped her fingers on the steering wheel, eyes drifting toward the street when something, or rather, someone, caught her attention. A woman stepped out of the cab a few meters away. Sleek red dress, heels clicking against the pavement, dark wavy hair that cascaded down her back. Even from a distance, she radiated confidence. Miriam's breath hitched. Sasha. The name burned in her mind as she watched the woman smooth down her dress and adjust the small purse on her shoulder. But what made Miriam's pulse quicken wasn't just seeing Sasha, it was where she was. She wasn't at a restaurant. She wasn't disappearing into an office building. She was walking down Miriam's own street. Miriam's grip on the steering wheel tightened as she watched Sasha stop in front of a familiar house. The two-story white home with a blue door. Mrs. Osei's house. Miriam's heart pounded. What was she doing here? Mrs. Osei was a well-known figure in the neighborhood, an older woman who loved hosting community gatherings. She was the type to welcome anyone with open arms, always insisting on feeding guests even if they had only dropped by for a minute. Was Sasha a guest? A friend? Or had she been here before? Many times, right under Miriam's nose, she swallowed hard, her fingers trembling as she reached for her phone. She wanted to snap a picture, to have proof, to do something. But what? Confront her here, on the street? March into Mrs. Osei's house and demand answers? Instead, she sat frozen, watching as Sasha disappeared inside like she belonged there. The school bell rang, jolting Miriam from her daze. The street suddenly came alive with laughter and the scuffling of small feet as children poured out of the gate. Kelvin was the first to spot her car, waving excitedly before rushing over, his backpack bouncing behind him. Zara followed at a slower pace, her face buried in a book, as always. Miriam forced a smile, her mind still spinning. Hey, babies. How was school? Kelvin climbed into the back seat, launching into a dramatic retelling of his day. Something about a science project, a lizard, and a boy named Jaden who got detention. Zara barely glanced up from her book as she slid into the front seat. It was fine. Miriam nodded, pretending to listen as she started the car. But her thoughts were elsewhere. Sasha had been just a few houses away. Had Daniel been here too? Had he sat in that very living room, sipping tea, while Miriam went about her daily routine like a fool? As she drove home, Miriam stole glances at the houses lining their street, suddenly feeling as if she were in unfamiliar territory. Had she been blind all this time? That evening, dinner was quieter than usual. Kelvin chattered away, but Zara was more observant. She glanced up from her plate, her sharp eyes narrowing slightly. Mom, are you okay? Miriam forced another smile. Of course, sweetheart. What? You're stirring your soup, but you're not eating it. Miriam blinked down at her untouched bowl, quickly grabbing a spoonful. Just a little tired. From across the table, Daniel remained oblivious, scrolling through his phone between bites. He looked relaxed, comfortable. Miriam studied him carefully, watching for any change in his expression, any flicker of guilt. Nothing. She placed her spoon down and took a slow breath. I ran into someone today. Or rather, I saw someone. Daniel barely looked up. Oh. Miriam wiped her hands with a napkin, her gaze never leaving his face. A woman named Sasha. It was quick, a flash of something in his eyes. A slight pause before he spoke. Who? Miriam's stomach twisted. That second of hesitation was all the confirmation she needed. She wanted to push. She wanted to say, don't lie to me. She wanted to throw her plate across the table, to make him look her in the eye and admit what he had done. But she didn't. Not yet. Instead, she let the silence hang between them, let the weight of his answer settle in the air. Daniel gave a small, dismissive chuckle. Don't know her. Miriam tilted her head slightly, pretending to consider his words. That's strange. She seemed familiar with our street. Daniel took another bite of his food, chewing slowly. Probably just visiting someone. Maybe. Miriam smiled tightly, picking up her spoon again. She had played the game, and now she knew. He was lying to her face. Miriam's transformation was not loud. It did not come with yelling or broken dishes. She did not throw accusations or demand answers. She simply stopped. She stopped asking Daniel where he was going, what time he would be back, or if he had eaten. She stopped peeking at his phone when it buzzed late at night. She stopped waiting by the window when he came home past midnight. Instead, she started living. She filled her days with laughter that had nothing to do with Daniel. She took longer to get dressed in the mornings, carefully selecting outfits that made her feel beautiful. Not for him, for herself. She went to lunch with friends, stayed longer at community meetings, and found new hobbies. She signed up for fitness class, even though she had never been the gym type. She took Zara and Kelvin for evening strolls, bought them ice cream on random afternoons, and read them bedtime stories with extra enthusiasm. It wasn't about revenge. Not at first. It was about reclaiming the parts of herself she had let fade. But Daniel noticed. At first, he didn't think much of it. He barely glanced up when she stepped out in a new dress, and he didn't comment when she started wearing perfume again. But when he woke up one Saturday morning to find the bed empty and the smell of fresh coffee filling the house, he frowned. Miriam was already dressed, humming softly as she buttered toast. Going somewhere? He asked, rubbing his eyes. She turned, her lips curling into a small smile. Brunch with Tasha and the girls. He blinked, still groggy. Brunch? Since when did she have brunch plans? Oh, he cleared his throat. What time will you be back? Miriam shrugged as she sipped her tea. Not sure. For the first time in a long time, she was the one leaving, and he was the one staying behind. That evening, Daniel returned home from work to the sound of Miriam laughing. A warm, genuine laugh, the kind he hadn't heard from her in years. But what made him pause mid-step wasn't just the laughter. It was the fact that she was on the phone. He leaned against the doorframe, watching as she twirled a strand of hair between her fingers. Her voice was soft, amused. Oh, stop it. You're ridiculous. Daniel's jaw tightened. She turned slightly, catching sight of him. Her expression didn't change. She didn't flinch or scramble to end the call. She simply met his gaze and smiled. I'll call you later. As she set her phone down, Daniel crossed his arms. Who was that? Miriam arched a brow. Just a friend. His stomach twisted. Since when did she have just a friend? He wanted to ask more, but how could he? He had spent months brushing off her questions, answering vaguely when she asked where he was or who he was with. Now the roles had changed, and he hated it. Days passed, and Daniel found himself noticing things he had taken for granted. Miriam's absence felt louder than her presence ever did. One evening, he arrived home earlier than usual, expecting to find her in the kitchen or watching TV with the kids. Instead, Zara was curled up on the couch, reading, while Kelvin played with his toy cars on the floor. Where's Mom? Daniel asked, trying to sound casual. Zara didn't even look up from her book. She went out. Daniel frowned. Out? Where? Kelvin shrugged. Dunno. She just said she'd be back later. Something in Daniel's chest tightened. She didn't tell him. She always told him. He sat down, restless. He scrolled through his phone. He turned on the TV, but couldn't focus on anything. He checked the time. 8:15 p.m. She never stayed out this late. Minutes dragged. 8:45 p.m. He heard a car pull up outside. A few seconds later, the door opened. Miriam walked in, her heels clicking softly against the floor. She looked radiant, cheeks slightly flushed, eyes bright. She set her purse down and smiled at the kids. Did you eat? Zara nodded. Yep. Daniel stood, clearing his throat. You were out late. Miriam glanced at the clock. Was I? Time flies when you're having fun. He stared at her, searching for something, an explanation, a sign of guilt. But she was calm, completely unbothered. And for the first time in a long time, Daniel was the one waiting for her. The next morning, Daniel found himself lingering at home longer than usual. Instead of rushing out the door for work, he sat at the dining table, watching as Miriam moved around the kitchen, effortlessly preparing breakfast. He cleared his throat. Do you have plans today? Miriam turned, a teasing glint in her eye. Why? Do you suddenly care? Daniel frowned. Of course I care. She hummed, placing a plate in front of him. I'll be busy. He clenched his jaw. Busy. Just like that. No explanations. No need for his approval. Later that day, he found himself distracted at work. His mind kept drifting back to Miriam, where she was, who she was with, why she had seemed so at peace. His coworkers noticed. Daniel, you all right? You've been staring at that report for the last 10 minutes. He forced a smile, shaking his head. Yeah, just distracted. Distracted was an understatement. He'd spent months wrapped up in his own world, certain Miriam would always be there, waiting. But now? Now, he wasn't so sure. One evening, Daniel walks into the living room, expecting the usual warmth of home, the smell of dinner, the soft hum of the television, the quiet comfort of knowing Miriam is in the kitchen, moving about like she always does. But today, the house is eerily silent. No plates clinking, no gentle sizzling from the stove. Nothing. His stomach tightens. He drops his keys on the table and looks around. Then he sees her. Miriam is sitting at the dining table, phone in hand, posture too still, too controlled. She isn't scrolling, isn't typing, just holding the phone, her fingers resting lightly on the edges. Her eyes lift slowly to meet his. Something in his chest tightens. Miriam, his voice is cautious. Are you okay? She tilts her head slightly, studying him. And then, with a voice that is eerily calm, she says the words that will change everything. I saw you, Daniel. I saw everything. The air in the room shifts. Daniel's shoulders stiffen. His jaw clenches, and for a moment, he doesn't respond. Then, he exhales sharply, dragging a hand down his face. Miriam, please, it's not what you think. She lets out a laugh. Not a light laugh, not an amused one. A deep, painful laugh. The kind of laugh that isn't laughter at all, but something broken pretending to be whole. She leans back in her chair, crossing her arms, still watching him. Oh, then tell me, Daniel. Tell me what I think. Daniel hesitates. For months, he's been the one in control, weaving careful excuses, dodging questions, staying just far enough ahead that Miriam wouldn't. Asterisk couldn't. Asterisk catch him completely. But she has. And now he is standing in front of her. No words left to twist into comfort. He swallows. It wasn't serious. Miriam's gaze sharpens. Not serious, she repeats. Her voice is too steady, too controlled. So what? You just tripped and fell into another woman's arms. Daniel looks away. I never meant to hurt you. Of course you didn't. She shakes her head. Men never mean to hurt their wives, do they? It just happens. Her voice isn't raised. She isn't yelling, throwing things, demanding explanations. And somehow, that makes it worse. He had expected anger. But this quiet disappointment, it burns. For a moment, neither of them speaks. The air between them is thick, heavy. Miriam shifts slightly, setting her phone down on the table with a soft click. Tell me, Daniel, she says quietly. When did you decide I wasn't enough? His breath catches. That's not what this is about. She raises a brow. Isn't it? He takes a step closer. Miriam, we've been together for 12 years. You and the kids are my whole life. She shakes her head. Don't say that. It's the truth. No, her voice is sharp now. The truth is, you sat across from another woman, laughed with her, touched her hand, looked at her the way you used to look at me. Daniel exhales, pinching the bridge of his nose. It was just, I don't know, Miriam. Things have been different between us. She cuts him off with a soft, bitter chuckle. Different? Of course, things have been different, Daniel. You've been distant, secretive. I spent months wondering if I was crazy, if I was imagining things. She stands now, pushing the chair back as she moves closer to him. But I wasn't imagining anything, was I? Daniel's throat tightens. Miriam, her voice lowers. Tell me the truth. His mouth opens, then closes. Because what truth is there to tell? That it started small? That he liked the attention? That, somewhere along the way, he stopped feeling guilty? He looks at her, really looks at her. And for the first time, he realizes just how tired she looks. How heavy the months of doubt and heartbreak have weighed on her. And for the first time since this all started, he understands. He has already lost her. Miriam doesn't wait for him to answer. She exhales slowly, nodding as if finally seeing something clearly. She reaches for her phone and picks it up again. I think you should leave. Daniel's eyes widen. Miriam. She shakes her head. Not forever. Just for now. His stomach twists. And if I don't? She meets his gaze, unwavering. Then I will. The finality in her tone shakes him. For the past 12 years, she has been his constant. The quiet force that held their home together. The woman who forgave his flaws, who built a life around them. And now, for the first time, she is choosing herself. He watches as she steps past him, moving toward the hallway. Her voice is softer when she speaks next. The kids will be back soon. I don't want them to see us like this. A lump rises in his throat. He wants to reach for her, to pull her close, to make her believe that them, can still be fixed. But he doesn't, because deep down he knows some things, once broken, can never be the same again. Daniel turns slowly, running a hand through his hair. He walks toward the door, his footsteps heavy, heart heavier. As he reaches for the handle, he glances back. Miriam is still standing there, arms crossed, looking at him with an expression he can't quite name. Not anger, not hatred, just emptiness. And somehow, that is the worst part of all. He steps outside, the cold night air biting against his skin. The door closes softly behind him. And for the first time in his life, Daniel is truly alone. The next morning, Daniel wakes up to an unsettling silence. His body stirs, but something feels off. No smell of frying eggs, no distant giggles of the kids, no familiar hum of Miriam moving around the house. Just emptiness. He rubs his face and sits up. Maybe he overslept. Maybe Miriam took the kids out early, but a gnawing feeling in his gut tells him otherwise. As he steps out of the bedroom, the air in the house feels different, lighter, but not in a good way. His feet pad against the cool floor as he moves toward the kitchen. It's spotless. Too spotless. The dish rack is empty. The counters are clear. Then he sees it, a neatly folded letter on the dining table. His heart pounds as he picks it up, his fingers slightly trembling. The handwriting is unmistakable. Miriam's, steady and sure. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. His breath catches. He reads it again, as if the words might change. But they don't. A chair scrapes against the floor as he stumbles back, letter still clutched in his hands. His eyes dart around the room, looking for clues, for anything out of place, for something that says this isn't real. Then it hits him. The bags. The kids. He bolts toward the front door, his heart slamming against his ribs. As he swings it open, a rush of cold morning air smacks him in the face. And there she is, Miriam, standing at the edge of the driveway, her back to him. A taxi idles in front of her, its trunk already packed. Zara and Kelvin stand beside her, their small hands gripping hers. Daniel's breath hitches. His feet refuse to move for a second, as if he's been planted into the ground. Miriam, his voice is hoarse, desperate. She doesn't turn. Not right away. For a moment, she remains still, as if bracing herself. Then, slowly, she looks over her shoulder. Her face is calm. Too calm. Where are you going? Daniel asks, stepping forward. She exhales, her grip tightening on the children's hands. Somewhere else. His stomach twists. Miriam, please. We need to talk. We talked, she says simply. For months, Daniel. I talked and you lied. Kelvin shifts uncomfortably, looking up at his mother. Mommy, can we go now? Daniel's heart shatters at the sound of his son's voice. So small, so unaware of the storm raging between his parents. He looks at Zara next. She isn't tugging at Miriam's hand. She isn't looking at him with the bright, curious eyes she always had for her father. Instead, she stares at the ground. Quiet, reserved, changed. Daniel swallows hard. Miriam, don't do this. Let's figure this out. Miriam studies him for a moment, then sighs. Daniel, I spent so long trying to make this home feel warm, trying to keep this family together. Her voice lowers. But love is not a one-person effort. The taxi driver leans out of the window. Madam, we should go now. Daniel shakes his head, panic seeping into his veins. This is our home, Miriam. A sad smile tugs at her lips. Home is where love lives, and I refuse to live where I am unloved. The words slice through him. He stumbles back slightly, struggling to breathe. Miriam, his voice is barely above a whisper now. Don't go. For the first time, something flickers in her eyes. Pain, regret, but not doubt. She turns to the kids, gently guiding them toward the taxi. Zara climbs in first, then Kelvin. The door clicks shut behind them. Miriam lingers for a moment, standing in the open doorway. Daniel takes another step forward, hope surging in his chest. Maybe she'll change her mind. Maybe she'll stop. But she doesn't. She lifts her gaze to meet his one final time. And then, softly, almost tenderly, she says goodbye, Daniel. She steps inside. The driver shifts gears. The taxi begins to roll forward. Daniel watches, frozen, as the car moves down the street. His heart pounds in his ears, his breath coming in short, broken gasps. She doesn't look back. She doesn't need to, because this time, she is truly leaving. Daniel stands there long after the taxi disappears. The house behind him feels colder, emptier, and for the first time, he realizes something terrifying. He thought he had control. He thought she would always be there, waiting, forgiving. But love, once taken for granted, doesn't always wait. And now, she's gone. Daniel doesn't know how long he stands there, but the sound of a neighbor's car, door slamming, jolts him. He blinks, his hands still shaking. His chest is tight, and the morning air suddenly feels suffocating. His feet drag him back inside, but it feels like stepping into a ghost town. The living room is too quiet, too still. The absence of his family presses against him like a crushing weight. He moves toward the couch and sinks onto it, his hands running over his face. The letter is still clutched in his fingers. He rereads it, hoping to find hidden words between the lines. Something, anything, that tells him she'll come back. But there's nothing. His eyes wander around the house. The small signs of their life together have vanished. Her favorite scarf isn't draped over the armchair. Zara's school books aren't piled on the dining table. Kelvin's tiny shoes aren't by the door. The silence is unbearable. Daniel presses his palms against his temples. This isn't happening, he mutters to himself. She's just angry. She just needs time. But deep down he knows. Miriam isn't the kind of woman who makes empty threats. She gave him time. She gave him chances. And he wasted them. He leans back, staring at the ceiling, a lump forming in his throat. Memories rush in. Miriam laughing in the kitchen as she tried to bake with the kids. Her sleepy smile when he kissed her forehead in the mornings, the way she used to light up when he walked through the door. When did it all slip away? When did he stop being the man she once trusted with her heart? A sharp knock on the door startles him. He hesitates before getting up, his chest tightening as he swings it open. It's his neighbor, Mrs. Osei. She looks at him with a knowing expression, arms folded over her chest. She's really gone? She asks quietly. Daniel swallows, his voice failing him. He simply nods. Mrs. Osei exhales, shaking her head. You know, she came to me a few days ago. She wasn't crying. She wasn't angry. Just tired. Daniel's stomach twists. Mrs. Osei studies him for a moment before saying, I hope you realize what you lost. She walks away, leaving him standing there in the doorway, the weight of her words sinking in. Daniel lets out a shaky breath, stepping back inside. He looks around the house again, but it no longer feels like home, because home was never the house. It was her. It was them. And now they're gone. Moral lesson. Neglect and betrayal don't happen overnight. They're built brick by brick in silence. And when a woman decides she's had enough, she won't argue. She will simply leave. If you found this story engaging, don't just watch, be part of the journey.